and welcome to the Pantheon, where Innistrad and the month of spookiness continues to rain terror upon us. And without further ado, let's get into something terrifying. It's a BOROS commander. Well, it's terrifying to play, probably not against. But this is a card that has a bunch of interesting directions you can take it. Rem Karolus, Stalwart, Slayer. A great name to start off with, isn't it? 3 mana for a 2/3 flying haste human knight. If a spell would deal damage to you or another permanent you control, prevent that damage. That's not just from us, that's from everyone, which is pretty good. And if a spell would deal damage to an opponent or a permanent an opponent controls, it deals that much damage +1 instead. So this is a nice effect. We're getting a lovely bit of symmetry there, or at least, in our favour. So if we play symmetrical effects, we'll really come out on top. And that's the direction I'd like to take this deck in, because I love breaking symmetry. It makes me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. Do you know what else does? Whenever somebody subscribes to my channel. Look at that for a transition there. Please do subscribe. I'm going to be making lots more videos like this, one for every single legendary creature. So come and join me on the journey into misery. And without further ado, let's have a look at our top 5. So in at number 5, speaking of symmetrical effects, I think Sulphurous Blast and effects like this are just phenomenal in the deck. 4 mana for an instant. It deals 2 damage to each creature and each player. If you cast the spell during your main phase, however, it deals 3 damage to each creature and each player instead. So the thing that I really like about this, the modal ability there, the fact that you can sort of manipulate it to sort of best take advantage of it, the 3 or the 2, is wonderful. And with our commander on the field, this is going to be dealing 0 to all of our other creatures and only 2 to our commander, so the 2 damage there is very important. But it's also going to be dealing 3 or potentially 4 if you cast it in your main phase to your opponent's creatures. And it's an instant. It just does everything this deck wants to do. And similarly, we've got a lot of other instant and sorcery that deal 2 damage across the board. So we keep all of our creatures, including our commander, who's a 2/3, and our opponents potentially lose their entire board. 3 damage is actually quite a bit. Kozilek's Return, 3 mana for an instant, devoid to its colours. Deals 2 damage to each creature. Then you cast an Eldrazi creature with Convert mana cost 7 or greater. You may exile it from your graveyard. If you do, it deals 5 damage to each creature. So a nice little bit of reach there, getting into the upper echelons of damage. If you're playing Eldrazi, and this deck doesn't really lend itself to Eldrazi, but you could slip a couple in there, especially if you're playing as the mill player. Hell with mill. Then we've got Fiery Cannonade, a pirate's favourite friend. 3 mana for an instant. It deals 2 damage to each non-pirate creature. So it's going to be 3 damage to our opponents, nothing to us apart from our commander. But, oh well, our commander takes 2 damage. He stays alive to live another day. Then we've got Volcanic Fallout, 3 mana for an instant, can't be countered, and it deals 2 damage to each creature and each player. So spreading the love there. We're going to take no damage, our opponents will take 3. And chipping away at our opponent's life total is essential. Then, a great card I've discovered here, Cave In. 5 mana for a sorcery. You may remove a red card from your hand from the game instead of paying Cave In's mana cost. So 5 mana is a lot for this sort of effect, but you could just exile a red card. Cave In deals 2 damage to each creature and each player. So we're going to take nothing. Our opponents lose everything, including the will to live. Then there's Incendiary Command. 5 mana for a sorcery. Choose 2. Deals 4 damage to target player. I'm going to choose one of my opponents. Which will be 5 damage because of our commander. Unlimited power. Or it deals 2 damage to each creature. Or destroy target non-basic land. Or each player discards all cards from their hand. Then draws that many cards. So, this card is so modal. It's fantastic. There's always going to be a good option there. Then finally, we've got Fiery Confluence. Speaking of options, 4 mana for a sorcery. Choose 3. You may choose the same mode more than once. It deals 1 damage to each creature. It deals 2 damage to each opponent. Destroy target artifact. So potentially this could be 6 damage to our opponents. Or 7 with our commander on the field. Or it could just deal a ton of damage around, destroy a couple of artifacts. There's so many ways that this card is fantastic for the deck. So put it in there. Which brings me on to my number 4 pick. And seeing as we're spreading all this damage around, why don't we gain some life from it. Because we're going to be dealing damage to all those creatures, we can gain damage. We can gain life for each bit of damage that's done. Radiant Scroll Wielder. Quite how one wields a scroll, I don't know. 4 mana for a 2/4. Instant sorcery spells you control have lifelink. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile an instant sorcery card at random from your graveyard. You may cast it this turn. If a spell cast this way will be put into your graveyard, exile it instead. So rebuying those spells is wonderful. It's a 2/4. It's going to survive all of our little cannonades and things like that. This card is fantastic. And look at that sort of beam that he's firing from a scroll. It's just gibberish, really, isn't it? Although there is Fire Song and Sun Speaker. 6 mana for a 4/6 legendary creature, Minotaur I think it's a cleric. Red instant sorcery spells you control have lifelink. So that's good because the majority of our deck would be red instant sorceries. They're the ones that generally deal damage. And whenever a white instant sorcery spell causes you to gain life, Fire Song and Sun Speaker deals 3 damage to target creature or player. Well, let's move on. Anyway, Soulfire Grandmaster, 2 mana for a 2/2 lifelink. Technically, because of the rules of Commander, you can't actually put this in your deck because of the blue pips there. I personally think you should be allowed to because, you can activate and cast everything on this card for, your Commander's identity. But, just ask your play group. If they say, yeah, sure, play with it. Play with it. This is a great card for the deck. Instant sorcery spells you control have lifelink, and you can pay 4. The next time you cast an instant sorcery spell from your hand this turn, put that card into your hand instead of into your graveyard as it resolves. So all these wonderful little burn spells we can rebuy. And then finally, we've got Aetherflux Reservoir. 4 mana for an artifact. Whenever you cast a spell, you gain 1 life for each spell you've cast this turn. And pay 50 life, it deals 50 damage to a creature or player. Perfect for destroying those Lanoir elves that have just been plaguing you for God knows how long. But if we're getting a ton of life from all our spells, this is a great card to put into the deck because it can just dome someone and kill them. Which brings me on to number 3. And at number 3, we've got Flame Rift. And these are all cards that, you wouldn't usually play them in Commander. But this sort of card is great with this Commander. 2 mana for a sorcery. It deals 4 damage to each player. So, yes, it's going to deal damage to us. But wait, our Commander says it doesn't. So, it's 4 damage, but wait, it's 5 damage thanks to our Commander. This is just wonderful in so many ways. 2 mana, 15 damage. I'd take that. That's pretty good. And if it's got lifelink, maybe we can return it to our hand. Maybe we're going to be doubling it, so we're going to be dealing even more damage. There's so many cool ways to use Flame Rift in the deck. Similarly, there's Acidic Soil. 3 mana for a sorcery. It deals 1 damage to each player for each land he or she controls. When you're playing against those green players, you know the ones. They've got 28 lands on the field. Well, now they've got 28 less life. 29 with our Commander on the field. But this card is just fantastic and does so much work. And it's one-sided because we're not going to get hit with it because of our Commander. Lovely stuff. Then there's Incite Rebellion. 6 mana for a sorcery. For each player, Incite Rebellion deals damage to that player, and each creature that player controls equal to the number of creatures they control. This is not only going to deal a ton of damage to the player, but it's going to wipe the board as well. And thanks to our Commander, we're going to keep our board state around. This card, chef's kiss. It just works fantastically in the deck. And then we've got Price of Progress. 2 mana. Instant. It deals damage to each player equal to twice the number of non-basic lands that player controls. Well, people like non-basic lands. People like running 5-color decks. I'm guilty of it myself, I admit. But why don't we punish those players by dealing, 40 life to them? 41 with our Commander on the field. This card is amazing and it will definitely close out games. Which brings me on to number 2. And at number 2, well, we've got all these cool instant sorceries. Let's rebuy them and recast them, reuse them, re-energize, rebuild. With Reiterate. 3 mana for an instant with buyback for 3. So you can pay an additional 3 as you cast a spell and put this card back into your hand as it resolves so you can use it again. And then copy target instant sorcery spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. The great thing about cards like this is, yes, we can use it on our big burn spells, finish off our opponents. But if early in the game, our opponent plays, I don't know, Kadama's Reach, well, you just reiterate it. You go, I'd like to have a couple of mountains. Yes, give me that. And you just get so much value of it. It's always good in the deck. And it's a counter spell as well. They go to counter your spell. You reiterate their counter spell. Oh, you've just countered their counter spell with a counter spell that reiterated bounce. Fury Storm is another great example of this. 4 mana, instant. Whenever you cast a spell, copy it for each time you've cast your commander from the command zone this game. You may choose new targets for the copies. Copy target instant sorcery spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. So, our commander, yes, we want to keep him around, but quite a few of our spells, they're going to end up dealing quite a bit of damage, And once our commander dies, we recast him. Suddenly, Fury Storm is just popping off. There's just copies of spells all over the place. So, if you can copy one of those big burn spells we were talking about, you could potentially, oh Christ, my face. There we go. I messed up everything. This could potentially be a lethal sort of like 4 copies, copy something, deal 28 damage. There's so many possibilities. Then bonus round. Oh, the cool thing also about copying the spell is with our commander, each of those copies will get +1 damage, which is really nice. Then there's bonus round, 3 mana for a sorcery. In turn of turn, whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell, that player copies it and may choose new targets for the copy. So that's every instant or sorcery spell. This is a great card to keep into your hand, setting up for that big turn that you just want to absolutely pop off. Suddenly you've got rituals flying everywhere, there's mana accumulating, you're drowning, going, ah, and suddenly you've dealt 58 damage to everyone. Then, Dual Caster Mage, a classic, a human wizard, 3 mana, 2/2 with flash. When it's the battlefield, copy target instant or sorcery spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. That's pretty goddamn cool, I like a man that does things. Which is most men, so do I like men? Anyway, a great man here, or dwarf, is Torbran, Thane of Redfell. 4 mana for a 2/4. If a red sorcery control would deal damage to an opponent or opponent an opponent controls, it deals that much damage +2. So this is just all about doubling the effect of our spells. All those, 2 damage to everything. Well, now it's 4 damage to everything our opponents control and our opponents face. This just turns all of our burn spells up a notch. And, like I said, every one of the copies will also get that effect. So if we're dealing 5 damage to our opponents, well, now it's 7. But if we've copied it, it's 7 and 7 and 7 and 7 and 7. This can just absolutely pop off. Then our commander, it protects all of our other creatures from damage. And Tajik Legion's Edge, the Edge of the Legion, 3 mana, 3/2 with haste. Mentor does exactly the same thing. Prevent all non-combat damage that would be dealt to other creatures you control. Obviously, Tajik is going to die to, one of our little board wipes. But if this is on the field with our commander, they protect each other. They're up in arms together going, ha ha, I ride a heron. Ha, I'm the Boros, Legion, Edge. And, it's just all around a good time. And you can give himself first strike. Why not? Then there's Chandra's Incinerator, a 6 mana 6/6, although it's not always going to cost you 6. This spell costs X less to cast, where X is the total amount of non-combat damage dealt to your opponents this turn. So with just one of our, 2 damage to all of our opponent spells and all their creatures, we can play this for a single red. It's got trample, and whenever sorcery control deals non-combat damage to an opponent, this deals that much damage to a target creature or planeswalker that player controls. So this is a great way of manipulating the battlefield, really keeping your opponents on their toes. You can just keep pinging away commanders, things like that, while we're dealing damage to the face. Which brings me on to number 1. And we've talked about, dealing damage to the face. But sometimes you just want to, destroy everything. Our commander, I don't really care if he dies. So why don't we just destroy everything using things like Fault Line. Fault Line is a double red and X instant. It deals X damage to each creature without flying and each player. So our commander has flying, I believe. He's sitting on a heron. I believe he would have flying. This is going to not kill our commander, deal X damage to everything, including our opponents. All of our creatures are going to survive. amazing spell. And it's an instant. Oh, it's just phenomenal. And look at that artwork. Look at all those little rocks falling. Just, you know, someone spent a lot of time building those chimneys. Why would you do this, you terrible little goblins? But similarly, there's Earthquake. Red and X, sorcery. Earthquake deals X damage to each creature without flying and each player. So again, this can just be a game-winning spell. I'd say it's comparable to something like, oh god, what's that blue instant 2-mana, bounce a permanent you don't control, Overload 7. It's completely gone out of my mind. But you know what I'm talking about. It's absolutely phenomenal, and it's going to be a complete one-sided board wipe and just set you up to win the game. Then this isn't going to deal damage to a player, but it's so cool. Subterranean Tremors. 1 red and X for sorcery. It deals X damage to each creature without flying, so again, our commander is spared. And if X is 4 or more, destroy all artifacts, so destroy that mono mud commander. Then, if X is 8 or more, you get an 8/8 red lizard. That's so cool. I just love a good little lizard. Although it's not that lizard, to be fair. And wait, no, not that little. It is a lizard. It's a lot lizard. It is still little. My mind. It's come to mush. Finally, we got Rolling Earthquake. Red and X for sorcery. Deals X damage to each creature without horsemanship and each player. So this will actually kill our commander because, sadly, it's riding a heron, not a horse. So this is a great card to just put in there and it will easily end games. And if you copy this sort of effect, you're going to be dealing so much damage to your opponents. It's phenomenal. And those are my top 5 cards for Rem Karolus. I don't know his actual name, but he's a really cool commander. You know, I really appreciate the direction that BOROS is going. There's a lot of different ways that you can build BOROS these days, and it's really nice to see. And this is an interesting one. I like it. It's good to see. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please do like, comment, subscribe, and send this video to a friend in need. A friend indeed. Thank you for watching. I'll see you soon. Bye.